Last week, I highlighted for you the unsettling and disturbing and outrageous reality that Donald Trump, despite running a chaotic campaign and making nearly every conceivable mistake from a strategic standpoint, could still win the presidency. And in fact, based on yesterday's analysis, Trump is doing better electorally in the 2024 polling than he actually did in the 2020 election. The point was that regardless of his poor choice of running mate in J.D. Vance, his disastrous debate performance, a string of other faux pas and missteps, Trump has essentially a 50-50 shot at reclaiming the Oval Office. Today, we're going to flip the script to explore the opposite scenario. Despite Kamala Harris's running an exceptionally strong campaign over the last couple of months, launching the campaign well, handling interviews well, handling the debate well, without a doubt, she's dramatically improved the chances of the Democratic Party for getting a win compared to when Joe Biden was at the top of the ticket. She could still lose, even though she's doing just about everything right. Kamala Harris first guaranteed herself as the surefire nominee once Biden dropped out. This was already a brilliant political move. She didn't leave it up to chance. She coalesced the right endorsements. She reached out to the Democratic delegates and secured them. And that was that. That was already something to be noted. Kamala Harris had to reassure Democrats, you're wise to put your trust in me. She had to quickly propel what was an admittedly low approval rating in order to match up better than Joe Biden did in the polls against Donald Trump. And she very quickly did that. She made it clear she's the right choice to swap Biden with, and that all was a success right out of the gate. Kamala Harris then capitalized on that excitement by immediately hosting large rallies where she demonstrated her public speaking ability has improved, but she was also able to hit Trump not only with good lines at the rallies like "say it to my face," when it looked like maybe Trump was going to be skipping out on debates against her, but she also filled arenas that within days Trump failed to fill. Another major win. And folks on the right criticized the Harris campaign's decision not to do media interviews right away, but it ended up being a reserved approach that proved successful. Kamala Harris continued to grow her lead without those interviews. She avoided bad interview moments that would come back to bite her while Trump did disastrous interview after disastrous interview. And then she was put to the test of finding a suitable running mate. By all accounts, Kamala Harris got that one right as well with Tim Walz. He's just a normal, folksy, Midwestern appeal guy, and he's adeptly branded Trump, Vance, and MAGA as just plain weird, which has also worked really well. Then we had the Democratic National Convention, which was as successful as you might hope for. Kamala Harris was praised for her speech. Fundraising poured in. She raised $540 million since the start of the campaign, which is sizable, so much so that she has money to give to candidates down ballot to help Democrats in the House and Senate. And then, of course, there's last week's debate, where Kamala Harris, by every serious account, was the victor, unless you ask the Trump cultists. But they're not reachable anyway, so who cares? She was confident. She seemed knowledgeable and in command. She looked like the only adult on stage, and it was sort of the right balance of here's what I would do, here's what I believe. And also, can you believe the stuff that Donald Trump is saying? She even goaded Trump into getting angry and going off into these wild tirades. And ultimately, the result was yet another bump in the polls, a wounded Trump, a triggered MAGA, and a Republican Party left searching for evidence of Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio, which is not where you want to be with 50 days left until the presidential election. All of that gets us to today. When we look at the national race, as we've been doing, Kamala Harris has been consistently outpolling Trump. ABC Ipsos, Yahoo News, Data for Progress, TIP polls have all come out after the debate They show Kamala Harris with a 4-point lead nationally. Reuters Ipsos has her up 5. Morning Consult actually had a +6. So by all accounts, Kamala Harris is doing everything right in this campaign. Democrats' chances of winning the election are way better than they were leading up to and in the immediate aftermath for Joe Biden of that June debate. And yet, and I know you know where I'm going with this, she could easily lose and we could get 4 more years of Donald Trump. I've shown you the paths to the White House many times for these two candidates. If Donald Trump is able to take back Arizona and Georgia, which are two traditionally Republican states, while defending North Carolina from being flipped, he only needs one of the 3 Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania, to get the 270 electoral votes that he needs. Now, it is true that Kamala Harris has opened up more paths to victory when she became the nominee than Joe Biden had. In fact, Joe Biden lacked some of the paths to victory that Kamala Harris is now looking at. Despite winning Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada in 2020, the polls did not show Joe Biden being competitive there in 2024. Winning North Carolina was not even a conversation for Joe Biden. Now all 4 of those states are essentially toss-ups. So Kamala's multiple paths to victory are unquestionably better than Joe Biden's one and realistically only path to victory. For Biden, winning was going to require holding the blue wall in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania in order to get the 270 electoral votes that he needs. Now, though that was essentially his only path, and it would barely get him over the threshold, it's still a viable path. Polling in those states was even sort of up until Biden's poor debate performance, and then it all started looking pretty unlikely. So one might expect that Kamala Harris creating these new paths to victory means she's got the Rust Belt states in the bag, or at least she's a heavy favorite there, a 5, 6, 7-point lead, because if it was close with Biden, Harris's national polling has improved. It must have improved in the Rust Belt, right? Wrong. Instead, the Real Clear Politics average has all of those states essentially tied. Kamala up by 1.2 in Wisconsin, 0.7 in Michigan, down a little bit in Pennsylvania. With those numbers, it's easy to see how Trump could pick up one of those states and secure the White House. There are some forecast models that have Kamala Harris as the favorite. The 538 model, the Vegas odds point to Kamala Harris. On the other hand, election forecaster Nate Silver made news last week when he said his current forecast gives Trump a 64% chance of winning the Electoral College, while Kamala Harris has just a 35% chance. Now, there's no doubt that Silver has been criticized for his model. It gives Trump the most positive outlook of any, but it's still a valuable analysis in that it's a sobering analysis. Trump outperformed the polls in 2016 and in 2020. Hillary Clinton was considered at one point a shoo-in in 2016, and Biden was expected to win comfortably. Whatever the final margin looked like nationally, both elections came down to around 100,000 votes in just a few states, and that could happen again. Now, we also have to talk about the other sort of elephant in the room, which is right now I've been talking about the will of the people. What will the will of the people dictate about the results in Michigan, for example, or Arizona or wherever? But we have to talk about Republican efforts to suppress the vote and potentially get us an outcome that doesn't even align with that of the will of the people. North Carolina will now have voter ID, and more votes are expected to be tossed because of new absentee ballot return deadlines. New laws in the state will also give partisan poll observers more authority to challenge ballots or say this early voting location or ballot or vote by mail is no good. In Georgia, conservative election officials, obviously influenced by pro-Trump members of the state election board, have introduced new rules that give them very broad discretion to just say, we're not going to certify the election results. These are so-called reasonable inquiry rules, and that could allow them to just delay the results on their say-so. We go further. Trump and his operatives around the country tried to steal an election in 2020. They failed, but they learned certain lessons that they could very much use to their advantage in 2024 if they once again attempt to steal it. They know what worked. They know what didn't work. They know what could have worked if they had done it slightly differently. And they will use those lessons to their advantage if they need to try it again in November. Ultimately, if this election comes down to the courts, as it did in 2000 with the Supreme Court's decision to stop the recount in Florida, Trump could be in a position to win, because remember that we have a 6-3 conservative Supreme Court majority. And the deference they've already shown to Trump and what he wants over the years is absolutely terrifying. So the end message, or where we kind of land, is the same as always. We can't control everything. Polls are just polls. We are just weeks out before this election. Let's not mistake the good vibes of the Kamala Harris campaign with a positive vision for the future and her recent absolute trouncing of Donald Trump in that debate as an indication that she is destined to win. We know how that's gone for us in the past. So now is the time to make sure you're registered. Go to vote.org to find out and confirm that you're registered. Find your polling place. Make sure you have a plan to vote on November 5th or by mail in advance or during early voting hours. Let's make sure that Donald Trump doesn't yet again win the keys to power, because it's not hyperbolic to say he does not respect the democratic foundations of this country. He respects them if they help him, and if they don't, out the window, flush 10 to 15 times. He said it about he said it about a number of different things. He said it with regard to the Constitution, that if he determines it's necessary, you could suspend some or all of the Constitution. He said it with regard to early voting or absentee voting, vote by mail. If it's convenient for him, that's great. And otherwise, it's bad, and he won't hesitate to do away with it. The best path to victory. I spoke about it with attorney Mark Elias, spoke about it with Brian Tyler Cohen, and we've talked about it so many times. The best insurance in November is a victory so overwhelming that none of their foul play and subterfuge will make a difference, because it just won't be close enough for them to try to steal it.